Imagine stepping onto a massive, historic aircraft carrier, a ship that once carried thousands of lives through war and conflict, now silent, resting in the San Diego Bay. By day, it's a museum, a proud monument to history. But as the sun sets and shadows deepen, a question lingers: is there something still alive on board? What if this ship, home to decades of sacrifice, courage, and loss, still holds on to its past? What if the footsteps echoing through its empty halls aren't just sounds, but spirits bound to the place where they served? Tonight, we invite you to go beyond the history books, to explore the USS Midway's hidden side, a side where whispers are heard in empty corridors, where figures vanish into thin air, and where a single, chilling bell rings without a hand to move it. This is the USS Midway, not just a museum, but a place where time itself seems to hold its breath. You see, there are those who say that while the ship's mission may have ended, some part of it never truly left. Beneath the gleam of history and the tales of bravery, whispers of something else emerge. Echoes of lives bound to this vessel, traces of stories that remain forever unfinished. From the shadows of its narrow corridors to the dim glow of the control room, the USS Midway seems to hold onto something deeper, something unseen but always present, waiting just beyond the edge of our understanding. This video will take you beyond the historic tours, into the heart of the Midway's most chilling tales. These are not stories for the faint-hearted. Staff members, visitors, even the security guards on duty at night have reported seeing and hearing things they cannot explain. Well-documented encounters suggest that there may be something here that no one fully understands, a presence that refuses to be silenced. If you're intrigued by stories that reveal a hidden layer of history, if you want to hear more of the unknown that lurks in places we think we know, make sure to subscribe to this channel for more videos like this. And now, let's step aboard the USS Midway to discover the chilling stories that still linger on its decks. They call it the Passageway of Whispers, a narrow corridor deep within the USS Midway. Few visitors see this part of the ship, tucked away from the bright displays and guided tours. Dimly lit, its walls carry the weight of countless footsteps, its steel seeming to absorb the secrets of the past. Those who dare to enter alone describe a silence that feels almost too quiet, like the ship itself is holding its breath. But then the silence is broken. Echoing down the length of the passageway, faint voices can sometimes be heard. They're subtle at first, just a murmur, like distant sounds carried by the wind. Yet, as you step further, these whispers seem to grow in strength, voices laced with urgency, resonating through the metal walls. Some swear they've heard words, fragments of orders or commands, spoken with the authority of men long gone. For the staff who know this ship well, these murmurs are more than unsettling. They feel as if the ship's past is still somehow alive, still bound to its passageways. Night after night, some crew members report the same haunting experience. Low voices drifting through the empty hall, never loud enough to make out fully, but unmistakably there. When they search for the source, they find only emptiness, the voices slipping back into silence, leaving an eerie calm in their wake. So, what would you do if you found yourself alone in that corridor, hearing voices that shouldn't be there, voices from a time long past? Would you walk deeper, or turn back, hoping to escape the whispers that seem to cling to the walls of the USS Midway? Let's move now to an account of one. This one shared by a seasoned night shift guard, a man who never gave much thought to ghost stories or superstitions. Known for his skeptical nature, he'd laugh off the rumors swirling around the USS Midway. Nothing but the creaks and groans of an old ship, he'd say. But one quiet night, as he made his routine patrol through the depths of the engine room, his belief in the ordinary would be shattered. The engine room lay silent, filled only with the low hum of dormant machinery. Shadows loomed in the dim light, stretching across rusted pipes and control panels. As he moved further in, he suddenly noticed someone standing by one of the control panels, a man dressed in an old Navy uniform, his posture rigid, his gaze fixed on the machinery before him. Puzzled, the guard called out, "Sir, this area's off limits." No response. The man's focus remained locked on the machinery, his hands poised as if operating controls that hadn't moved in years. The guard stepped closer, irritation mixing with unease. But as he approached, a chill crept over him. The air grew heavy, and he felt a sense of foreboding settle in. Determined, he reached out, intending to place a hand on the man's shoulder to get his attention. But what happened next left him shaken to his core. His hand passed straight through the figure, meeting nothing but cold, empty air. The guard stumbled back, his breath caught in his throat, his mind racing to make sense of what he'd just seen. He blinked, and in that instant, the figure simply vanished, fading into the dim shadows of the engine room as if he'd never been there. Shaken and terrified, the guard left his shift early that night, refusing to step foot on the ship again. For someone who had never believed in the paranormal, this experience was enough to make him question everything. He would later tell others, in a hushed voice, that the man he saw was no living person, but a spirit bound to the ship, a soul that seemed to linger in the engine room, still at his post. And now, the question falls to you. Do you believe that spirits from the past can linger, attached to places that once pulsed with life? Or was this just a trick of the mind? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. As we make our way to the flight deck, there's yet another story that chills the hearts of those who hear it, a legend known among visitors and staff alike. They call him the Phantom Pilot, a young man, barely more than a boy, dressed in the faded uniform of a 1960s Navy pilot. He appears around twilight, just as the light begins to fade, his figure emerging quietly near the restored aircraft on the deck. Visitors describe him as a solemn presence, a young man with a look of deep concentration and, perhaps, regret. He paces near the planes, his gaze distant, his steps measured, as if he's reliving moments only he can see. Those who get close enough say they can hear him speaking, his voice barely a whisper, muttering about an unfinished mission. A mission some believe that he never had the chance to complete. One visitor, a man who had spent his life fascinated by naval history, saw the young pilot one evening. Intrigued, he approached, calling out, "Excuse me, are you part of the museum staff?" The pilot's gaze shifted, and for a fleeting moment, their eyes met. The visitor would later recount that the young man's expression held a profound sadness, a look of someone who knew he was bound to a duty that would never be fulfilled. But before the visitor could say another word, the pilot simply vanished, disappearing into thin air, leaving nothing but silence in his wake. This apparition leaves an undeniable feeling of sadness, as if this young man is forever tied to the Midway, reliving the same moments over and over, unable to move on from a mission that was left incomplete. Some say they feel a chill whenever they pass by his pacing grounds, as if his presence lingers, invisible yet always there, haunted by a duty that time could never erase. And now, we're left to wonder, could this young pilot's spirit be forever bound to the USS Midway, trapped in a state of unfulfilled duty? Or is this just the power of suggestion, conjuring figures from the shadows of history? What do you think? Could it be possible that some souls are unable to rest until their work is truly done? You've already heard the whispers that echo through the narrow passageways, the ghostly figure of a sailor still at his post, and the young pilot on the flight deck, haunted by an unfinished mission. But perhaps the most unsettling of all the tales from the USS Midway involves a sound that seems to emerge from the ship itself, a sound that rings through the silence and stirs something deep within those who hear it. According to tradition, A ship's bell is sacred, only meant to ring under specific conditions, a way to mark time, to signal crew changes, or to honor the fallen. And yet, on the USS Midway, the bell has been known to chime on its own, without a single hand to touch it. On foggy nights, when the mist shrouds the ship and the deck is silent, a single, loud chime resonates through the air. It's as if the bell calls out, breaking the quiet in a way that no one can ignore. Some say the bell's ring is a message, a sign from those who served on this ship, perhaps even from those whose spirits we've already encountered. The voices in the passageway, the vanished guard, the phantom pilot, all seem to point to the fact that the Midway holds onto its past, with spirits who linger, bound to this vessel. Could it be that the bell rings to remind us of the lives forever tied to this ship? Staff members have tried to explain the ringing. They've checked every inch of the bell and surrounding area, hoping to find an answer. But each time, they're met with silence and empty corridors. The bell stands still, yet those who've heard its eerie chime swear that its sound is real, a sound that lingers long after the echo fades, leaving an uneasiness they can't shake. So, what do you believe? Is the bell ringing as a ghostly reminder, a final salute to those who served on the Midway? Or is it the ship itself, holding on to secrets that refuse to rest? Could it be that the USS Midway is more than just a museum, but a vessel still bound to the spirits of its past? To truly grasp the eerie stories surrounding the USS Midway, we have to look back at her remarkable past, a past that spans decades of service, countless missions, and unforgettable moments in history. This ship is more than just metal and machinery. She's a testament to human resilience, bravery, and sacrifice. The USS Midway was commissioned on September 10, 1945, right at the close of World War II. At that time, she was the largest warship ever built, a floating fortress of steel and technology that represented the strength of a nation. But she missed combat in that war by mere days, as peace was declared just as she was ready for action. Yet, her journey was only beginning. By the time the Vietnam War broke out, the Midway had become a powerful and seasoned vessel, capable of launching massive air operations. In 1965, her pilot shot down the first MiG of the Vietnam conflict, marking a significant moment not just for the ship, but for the sailors and aviators who called her home. For many young men on board, she was both a refuge and a battleground, a place where they lived, trained, and faced the dangers of war. The ship wasn't just a place they worked. It was where they ate, slept, and carried out orders that could mean life or death. Over time, as the conflict raged on, the Midway's role grew. She participated in countless missions, each one more perilous than the last. Stories of narrow escapes, daring rescues, and tragic losses became part of the fabric of the ship. This wasn't just machinery at work. This was a space that bore witness to moments of courage, fear, and sacrifice. Fast forward to 1991, and the Midway found herself at the heart of another major conflict, Operation Desert Storm. Now a world away from the jungles of Vietnam, the Midway served as the flagship in the Persian Gulf, leading the air operations in the First Gulf War. Imagine being on that flight deck, watching aircraft launch into the desert night, knowing each mission could be the last for the pilots on board. For those who served on her, the Midway became something far more profound than a ship. She was a lifeline, a place where they depended on each other, fought side by side, and sometimes said goodbye to friends who didn't come back. When the Midway was decommissioned in 1992, she had served for nearly 5 decades. Think about that, almost 50 years of service, filled with countless lives and untold stories. Sailors who served on her as young men returned decades later as older, seasoned veterans, touching the same railings, standing in the same spots, remembering comrades they'd lost along the way. It's this deep well of experience, of life, death, bravery, and fear, that some believe has left an imprint on the USS Midway. When you hear the stories of whispers in the passageways or sightings of figures from the past, it's hard not to wonder if these aren't just tales, but echoes of something real. Maybe ships like the Midway hold on to the energies of those who served, like a bridge between this world and the memories of those who are no longer here. For many, this vessel represents more than history. It's a place where the living and the past converge, where footsteps of today's visitors walk alongside the shadows of those who once walked these same decks in times of peril. The Midway may be silent now, resting in the San Diego Bay, but some believe her legacy lives on in ways far beyond what we can see or touch. As we journey through these stories, let's remember that this isn't just a museum. This ship was once alive with the voices of real people, people who left a part of themselves here. And perhaps, in some way, a part of them still remains. People have tried to make sense of these stories, each with their own theories. For some, the answer lies in what's called residual energy, a concept that suggests powerful experiences, especially traumatic events, can leave a kind of emotional imprint on a place. When you consider the Midway's history of warfare, intense battles, and the sheer volume of human life lived aboard, it's not hard to imagine that those experiences might linger, almost like a recording that plays back under certain conditions. This residual energy could explain why visitors and staff report hearing voices or seeing figures, as if they're catching glimpses of moments frozen in time. Others believe the explanation goes deeper, suggesting that spirits can become attached to places they held dear or where they experienced profound events. In life, sailors and pilots would have poured themselves into the Midway, and for some, it might have been the last place they knew. Those who hold to this theory wonder if these spirits still feel a sense of duty, tied to the ship as if they're unwilling or unable to leave the place where they served. Then, of course, there are those who prefer a more scientific explanation. Psychologists suggest that our minds can play tricks on us, especially in dark, unfamiliar settings. The power of suggestion, combined with environmental factors, like the creaks of old metal and shadows cast by dim lighting, can make us feel as though we're not alone, even when we are. Ships, with their maze-like interiors and low ceilings, can feel naturally unsettling, priming our brains to interpret small sounds or movements as something eerie. But for every rational theory, there are those who believe something else entirely. They wonder if the Midway, with its long history of service, could act as a portal, a place where the boundary between the past and present, the living and the dead, is somehow thinner. Could it be that the USS Midway is not just holding on to memories, but serving as a bridge to those who have long passed? The possibility remains open, each theory as mysterious as the last. So, is the Midway haunted by the energies and spirits of those who served? Or is it simply a vessel of memory, where echoes of history create an illusion of life? Only those who have felt its strange presence can truly say. One question remains. Why does a place like the USS Midway seem to hold onto its past so powerfully? Some places seem to carry the weight of memory more than others, as if they've become repositories for the lives, experiences, and emotions of everyone who ever passed through. Perhaps it's the Midway's long history, its years of service, sacrifice, and loss, that has left an indelible mark on this ship. Or perhaps it's something more mysterious, something we can't quite explain, as if the ship itself has absorbed these moments and refuses to let them fade. This is, after all, more than a museum. It's a place that was once alive with the heartbeat of thousands, a place where men and women served, laughed, mourned, and, for some, said their final goodbyes. The USS Midway may rest quietly now, but one has to wonder if it will always carry with it the spirit of those who lived and died on its decks, a silent tribute to lives shaped by duty and courage. So, what do you think? Could these encounters be genuine glimpses of the past, fragments of spirits still bound to the Midway? Or are they simply tricks of the mind, shaped by suggestion and the power of history? Let us know your thoughts and theories in the comments below. And if you've ever experienced something you couldn't explain, we'd love to hear about it. Thank you for joining us on this journey. And remember to subscribe for more tales of mystery and history.